For so many of us, putting on a playlist is the very last thing we do before drifting off to sleep. It's this comforting ritual, right? A way to quiet a racing mind. But what does the science actually say about this nightly habit? Let's get into it.
So what's the deal here? Are our favorite bedtime tunes a real deal sleep aid, or could something else be going on entirely? We're going to dig into the research, and trust me, the answer is way more complex, and honestly more fascinating than you might think.
And this is a question worth asking, because we're not talking about some niche habit here. A huge online survey found that a staggering 62% of people use music to help them fall asleep. That's a massive number. It's a mainstream thing that people do all over the world.
And it's not just us thinking this is a good idea. This is so widely accepted that even top health organizations like the National Institutes of Health give it a thumbs up. They often suggest quiet music as part of a healthy bedtime routine. So case closed, right? Well, not so fast.
Because then, this study from Baylor University comes along and reaches a completely different conclusion. This quote right here basically calls out everything we thought we knew, suggesting our favorite sleep strategy might actually be backfiring. So what on earth did they find?
So, the Baylor study actually used sensors to objectively measure people's sleep, and they found something pretty wild. Listening to music, especially instrumental stuff without words, could actually make your sleep quality worse. The thing is, your brain doesn't just switch off when the music stops. Nope, it keeps processing those tunes for hours.
And the culprit here is something we have all experienced. The earworm. That song that gets stuck on a loop in your head and just won't leave? The study found that listening to music before bed could trigger these earworms, and when that happens at night, it's linked to worse sleep, even if you don't realize it's happening.
Okay, so how do we make sense of this? On one hand, millions of people feel like music helps them sleep. On the other, the hard data says it can hurt. Well, this brings us to what's called the sleep illusion. Music can absolutely improve how we feel about our sleep. It makes us feel more relaxed and less stressed about being awake, even if our actual physiological sleep doesn't get better, or even gets a little bit worse.
And that totally explains the psychological side of things, right? This is why so many of us swear it works. Music is a fantastic distraction. It pulls our attention away from all those anxious thoughts, it becomes a comforting habit, and, it's an amazing tool for just changing our mood as we wind down for the night.
But it's not just in our heads. There are real, measurable things happening in our bodies. The right kind of music can activate what's called our parasympathetic nervous system. That's basically the body's rest and digest, or chill out mode. This helps lower the stress hormone cortisol. It slows down our heart rate and it calms our breathing. It creates the perfect physical state to fall asleep.
So here's the bottom line. The debate isn't really about if music belongs in our bedtime routine. It's all about choosing the right kind of music. The specific features of a song are what make it either a sleep aid or a sleep disruptor.
And if there's one single characteristic that matters most, study after study says it's tempo. The sweet spot is right between 60 and 80 beats per minute. Now, why that specific range? Well, it's because it actually mimics our natural resting heart rate. It kind of helps our bodies get in sync with that calmer rhythm and just ease into sleep. Pretty cool, right?
Okay, check this out. This data comes from a huge analysis of Spotify playlists, and it's so revealing. Just look at the difference here. When you compare it to general music, stuff specifically labeled sleep music is way softer, way less energetic, and it's almost always instrumental. It's a totally different animal, built for a completely different job.
So if you build on that, you can start to see a clear formula emerge. The best music for sleep has these soft, smooth melodies and a simple, predictable structure. It doesn't make your brain work hard. And crucially, it almost never has lyrics, because lyrics can activate the language centers in our brain and keep us alert.
All right, let's put it all together. Let's make this super practical. When you're building your perfect sleep soundtrack, you want to fill it with instrumental tracks that have that slow 60 to 80 BPM tempo and a simple structure. On the flip side, you want to avoid anything with obvious lyrics, anything with complex or surprising rhythms, and definitely anything with sudden changes in volume that could startle you awake.
But hey, maybe music isn't your thing at all. And that's totally fine, because music isn't the only sound people use to get a better night's rest. A lot of people find that a steady, consistent noise is just as good, if not better, at blocking out distractions.
And this is where we get into the colors of noise. You've probably heard of white noise, right? It's like the hum of a fan, and it has all the sound frequencies in there equally. But there's also pink noise, which is a bit deeper, like the sound of steady rain. And then there's brown noise, which is even more rumbly, like a big waterfall.
Which one is best is totally up to you, but they all work by creating this constant, soothing soundscape.
And that really brings us to our final thought. The perfect soundscape for sleep is just so deeply personal. It could be a carefully chosen playlist of ambient music, the gentle rumble of brown noise, or, hey, maybe even total silence. The key is to find what works for you, what signals to your brain that it's time to power down and rest. So I'll leave you with this. What does your perfect sleep sound like?